Hello, welcome back to the breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a lot of big news I'd like to brief you all on today. So, we're going to start off talking about a major fire that broke out in Moscow, the capital of Russia, last night. You can see here on your screen Moscow's Institute of Computer Science burns to the ground in Russia. The institution is known for its involvement in development of high performance computing systems pivotal for national security, geoinformation, and navigation systems. Okay, so reportedly, this Moscow Institute of Computer Science has a direct connection to Russia's military. I do have some information as well. The institute has been sanctioned for working in the Russian IT sector and holding a license issued by the FSB, Center for Licensing, Certification, and State Secrets Protection. These sanctions were introduced in December of 2023 following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, highlighting the Institute's role in potentially sensitive or strategic technological advancements. Okay, so clearly having direct connection to the military. Now, we don't know what the exact cause of the fire was. My best guess is probably some sort of sabotage, but this thing definitely burned to the ground and completely destroyed. Should be a major hit to Russia's military in terms of technology. So we'll talk more about that. I've got video footage coming out from Moscow as well from last night. We also have a report to go over as Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, is potentially going to be traveling to Washington pretty soon to meet with Donald Trump and present a plan to deploy 30,000 peacekeepers to Ukraine in the event that Ukraine and Russia sign a peace deal. So that's very big news. I'll give you guys those details here in just a little bit. And also last night, multiple cities inside of Ukraine being hammered by drones. I believe missiles and bombs being used as well. I think Iskanders, up to 14 missiles, I believe, were fired into Ukraine. Also, guided aerial bombs slamming into cities like Kostiantynivka, if I'm pronouncing that right. That city just got hit yesterday. Odessa was being hammered by drones once again. Multiple cities that we literally just talked about yesterday being attacked. Same thing happening again, okay? And lots of people being injured in these attacks inside of Ukraine. So let's go ahead and hop into this, guys. I've got a lot of information to share with you today. So we're going to go ahead and jump on over here to X with War Translated. According to Russian media, a research institute in Moscow that developed technologies for the military and defense industry burned down overnight. Russian channels report that the Lebedev Institute of Precision Mechanics and Computer Engineering was destroyed by fire. The institute had been under EU and Swiss sanctions and was involved in developing secure SIM cards and radar equipment for military ships. The cause of the fire was not disclosed. Okay, so we've got a 48-second clip showing this thing having a massive fire at this institute. So the beginning of this video is a little bit quiet, but it will pick up with some sound towards the middle of this video. So take a look at this real quick. All right, guys. So lots of fires being reported in Moscow over like the last year. It's almost every week we report some sort of major fire over here. And something that I thought was always really strange was many times it was actually furniture warehouses. So reportedly, furniture warehouses just burning to the ground. Now, could some of these be disguised as furniture warehouses, but maybe being used for the military? That's possible. But that's something that we have seen a lot. It's the first time we've seen a major institute for computer science or technology, some sort of technological building being destroyed in Moscow. So, pretty insane story coming out today and a major fire to report. Here's some pictures coming out from Moscow, also from Max 24. It says more from Moscow Institute. Okay, go ahead and take a look at this, guys. Just massive amounts of smoke as this thing continued to burn all the way through the night. I think they eventually were able to put the fire out early in the morning, but all the way through the nighttime continuously kept burning, as you can see here in the photos. Okay, so major fire there in Moscow. Now we're going to jump on over to a report here from Vicegrad24. Breaking, the Telegraph reports that Keir Starmer is traveling to Washington to present Trump with a plan of deploying around 30,000 European peacekeeping, I think he meant peacekeepers, to Ukraine after a peace deal. He will urge Trump to have U.S. jets and missiles on standby in Eastern Europe to respond with if Russia breaks the terms of the deal. European forces will be deployed to Ukrainian cities, ports, and critical infrastructure sites such as nuclear power stations, but won't be put in a demilitarized zone separating Ukrainian and Russian forces. The cities of Poltava, Kryvyi Rih, and Dnipro will likely serve as the main bases for the European troops. Zelensky has previously said that at least 120,000 to 150,000 soldiers would be needed for the plan to be viable. He would also likely want to have them deployed in a demilitarized zone, separating Ukrainians and Russians. Okay, so this will be interesting how this is going to work out, because many of the numbers we've been seeing in terms of troop numbers that Europe would deploy to Ukraine is a lot smaller than what Zelensky has been stating that he needs, as it says here, around 120 to 150,000. So reportedly, could the UK deploy 30,000 troops over here? Now, would other countries get involved? We don't know for sure yet, but we know the UK for sure has come out recently stating they will deploy troops to Ukraine. I think even Sweden. France is kind of back and forth right now, so we don't know if France would get involved, but this was a little picture being shared here. It says where troops could be deployed. Bases for JEF in France, Ukrainian troops protecting front line, U.S. air cover, and satellite surveillance. Russia's likely routes of attack. Okay, so these red arrows is probably where Russia might attack if the war were to come to an end and we were to have a ceasefire here. So these would probably be the main areas they'd want to cover. And then U.S. air cover and satellite surveillance is kind of orange color, which would be mainly along the demilitarized zone here, which is where Ukrainian troops would be deployed at. So I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but I mean, it kind of seems like this is the way it might be resolved. And we may just kind of see a freezing of the front line here, and then Ukrainian troops will be deployed to the front. And we've been hearing that European troops would probably be more in the back end. But this is interesting because we were hearing recently that mostly troops would be stationed in the western side of Ukraine. They didn't want to get anywhere close to the front line. But it looks like we could potentially see this plan being placed here where we're going to have European troops much closer to the front, okay? Now moving on to Max 24, European diplomats are looking for answers to the question of what to do if Russia attacks peacekeepers in Ukraine. According to Roslas, the U.S. insists that European forces should not fall under the 5th article of the NATO Charter on Collective Defense. However, politicians cannot yet agree on what deterrent function such forces should perform and how to react if Russia launches a missile strike on peacekeepers, for example. There is no answer yet, okay? So that's obviously a major concern and a huge risk for these European peacekeepers to be stationed inside of Ukraine. You know, what if this war breaks out again and Russia launches a major missile attack on Ukraine or something, and then all of a sudden now we have European troops being killed, many of these being NATO nations. So would they be covered under Article 5? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think that would definitely, boost support for Ukraine and make it highly unlikely that Russia would launch an attack. I don't think they want to risk Article 5 being invoked, but who knows here. But that was some information coming out today. Now we're going to talk about the attacks inside of Ukraine. This is from Timothy Milovanov, if I'm saying that right. Sky over Odessa, Ukraine. This is the second Russian attack on Odessa in 2 days. The central district of the city, with 250,000 people, is without electricity and water supply after Lavrov's statement that they don't bomb civilian energy supply systems through Reuters. Okay, so yeah, so yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before, we had that report from Sergei Lavrov that the foreign minister of Russia, he was stating at the meeting with the U.S. that in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, he was stating that they basically don't attack any civilian infrastructure inside of Ukraine, primarily like their electrical substations or whatnot, their energy facilities. And there's major blackout inside of Odessa, and it's been like that for 2 days now. And this is after another attack now last night. So take a look at this video.
Охуеть, блядь. Це просто пизда.
All right, so you can see it was clearly a major battle zone inside of Odessa last night as Ukrainian air defense teams were trying to bring down all these incoming drones. And I believe about 160 or more Russian Shahed drones were fired onto Ukraine. And that's something we have been seeing over the last probably 4 to 5 days now, is well over 150 drones fired every night. So Russia is really picking up their attacks in terms of drones on Ukraine, has been very heavy recently. Now, from Bliskovka, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine showed how they eliminated the consequences of Russia's evening strike on Odessa. The Russian attack caused fires in a catering establishment and a warehouse building, damaged an administrative building, a car wash, a roadway, and the glazing of a private house. It is known that a man was injured and hospitalized in moderate condition. Okay, so we've got a video here of firefighter crews putting out numerous fires across Odessa as a lot of these drones were crashing into buildings, destroying all kinds of infrastructure inside of Odessa. So we got a video, a few pictures to share with you. Let's start with this here. All right, so second consecutive night of massive attacks inside the city of Odessa. So we can see lots of damage here to many buildings catching on fire from these drones. Many of them probably being shot down, maybe some hitting their direct targets. Here's another firefighter trying to put out a blaze on a building. And even more of it right here. You can see they use these foam cannons to try to put out these fires. Here's one more picture for you guys as well, up on a lift of a firefighter trying to put out a blaze on what looks like some sort of high-rise building, potentially an apartment building. Okay, so we've been seeing a lot of that recently as well. A lot of these Russian drones end up destroying many homes and residential buildings. All right, so take a look at this as well from Nexta. 5 people, including 2 children, were injured when a Russian air bomb hit a high-rise building in Kherson. Rescue operations continue. All right, so you can see here once again another Russian bomb destroying an apartment building. Okay, so look, it just completely collapsed. And a little bit of information behind this story, I heard as well that the woman of these 2 children, or the mother, excuse me, is actually still trapped under the rubble here from what I last heard, and they were still trying to rescue her. So very unfortunate situation. I believe she may have lost her life, and looks like 5 people also being injured here. So very sad story there. Also from Bliskovka, Russian strikes on Kostiantynivka killed 4 people, reports the head of Donetsk Regional Military Administration, Filashkin. The city was subjected to 4 airstrikes and shelling from cannon artillery. Okay, so we can see major damage here once again to Kostiantynivka being hammered, okay, in the Donetsk region. Now, this is much closer to the front line, which makes sense why it would be attacked. Could be, actual Ukrainian troops here stationed inside of this town. Maybe that's why Russia's hammering it so much. And you can see artillery also hitting this city as well. So it's not too far away from the front line, which is why it gets attacked pretty frequently. But we just reported here yesterday, Kostiantynivka got hit by bombs as well. Now for Military News UA, the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine confirmed to Ukrainian media that it conducted a special operation. They remotely blew up dozens of goggles for FPV drones while they were being used by Russian pilots. Inside the goggles, which were given to the FPV pilots by Russian volunteers, was a remotely detonated explosive device. Okay, so what does that remind you guys of? This reminds me of what happened inside of Lebanon just months back. We had the Israelis carry out a massive operation where we had beepers, pagers just exploding all over the place inside of southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah had a lot of these pagers on their hips and in their hands. They were just blowing up all over the place, and Israel's Mossad, their intelligence agency, carried out that attack and somehow was able to transfer those pagers over to Hezbollah. Soon after that, radios were blowing up, cell phones, all kinds of electronic equipment, even TVs in people's homes. So it looks like Ukraine carried out a very similar operation, and this was actually reported roughly about a week ago. I wasn't able to get to this story. Unfortunately, I had missed it. But looks like it was a true story, as we heard this just about a week ago, and looks like Ukraine did carry out an operation with some FPV goggles that I believe they had some sort of explosives, like plastic explosives. And at the time, the Russians were coming out and stating they had intercepted this batch of FPV goggles that were tampered with. But it looks like Ukrainian intelligence is indicating here that this was actually a successful operation, and they did eliminate Russian pilots that were trying to use these for FPV drones. So that's pretty crazy. There's a picture of a pig's head with that FPV goggle attached to it as it explodes. Okay. Now for Max 24, the press conference after the meeting was canceled at the request of the American side. Okay, so just today, this is Keith Kellogg, the special envoy from the United States. He met with Zelensky today. He arrived last night inside of Kiev, and reportedly they were going to hold a press conference, and for some reason that got canceled. I don't know why, but the American side canceled it, and I don't know if this is a sign of more, Ukraine and the United States kind of breaking apart in terms of relations. But I wonder as well if Keith Kellogg here is going to be heading to the front line, because Zelensky was supposedly going to bring him to the front, maybe in the Donetsk region or something, to show him the realities on the ground. Looks like that could potentially be canceled if they didn't even hold a press conference. Okay. Now for Max 24, a bulk carrier carrying 3,000 tons of corn began to sink in the Sea of Azov. The vessel sustained a hole near the port of Azov. The vessel Pavel Grabovsky flies the flag of Panama, left Rostov, and was heading to Samsun, Turkey. All right, so yet again, another what appears to be a Russian vessel that's used this time to transport corn apparently was starting to sink in the Sea of Azov. Okay, this is a video here of this tanker that was sinking in the water. Okay, so this is multiple times now that we have seen this, and I mean, look at how rusted out this tanker is. Okay, so clearly a lot of these are not seaworthy. They're very dangerous and unsafe to be sailing, and allegedly started to sink. I don't know for sure if it sank completely, but this was some video footage coming out today showing that thing. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but yet again, another bulk carrier starting to sink. Okay, so now from Anton Gerashenko, 3 ships that recently called at Russian ports were damaged by mysterious blasts in the Mediterranean over the past month, according to Reuters. 3 separate incidents occurred due to unknown causes. Crude oil tanker Sea Jewel, operated by Greek company Thenimaris, at a port in northern Italy on February 15th. Crude oil tanker Sea Charm, also operated by Thenimaris, off the Turkish Mediterranean port of Ceyhan late January, and chemical and products tanker Grace Ferrum flying the Liberian flag off the coast of Libya in February. Okay, so just over the last couple months, multiple tankers being damaged by explosions. Now, are these some sort of sabotage events? I'm thinking highly likely they probably are. Whether it's being carried out by Ukraine, is this being carried out by Europe? We don't really know, but we know there is a hybrid war going on right now between Europe and also Russia. We've been seeing lots of cables being cut in the Baltic Sea. So is this, Europe carrying out some types of sabotage on these ships, planting explosives on them? We don't really know all the details yet, but we've been reporting a lot of this recently of these ships having explosions aboard. Okay, so now from next, Russia is no longer an aggressor, at least. That's the new policy of the Trump administration. In the new G7 communique, the U.S. is opposing the use of the term aggressor when referring to Russia, Financial Times reports. Citing sources, American representatives have also objected to phrases like Russian aggression and similar wording that has been used since 2022. According to the publication, Trump's administration's insistence on softening rhetoric reflects a broader shift in U.S. position aiming to portray the war as a Ukrainian conflict. Trump's wording consistently reframes the war that Russia started in Ukraine, often calling it the Ukrainian war, implying that it is an internal Ukrainian conflict he wants no part of. Today, Trump denies that Russia is the aggressor, and tomorrow he will accuse the U.S. of starting the war in Ukraine. Is there any limit to this madness? Okay, so yeah, we definitely have seen a completely different change in rhetoric here in the way this war is talked about. We're not hearing it as much anymore. Many senators and officials of the U.S. government, even just in the last year, were calling this Russia's aggression. Russia attacked Ukraine. Now it's kind of being shifted differently, as recently we've been hearing Trump coming out, calling Zelensky a dictator, telling him he needs to hurry up and end this war. He's going to lose his country. That it was all Ukraine's fault for starting this war, even though Russia attacked them. It's just a much different way of discussing this war and talking about it. And we have seen the U.S. moving towards buddying up with Russia. So potentially, could Russia and the U.S. start to become more allies in the future? I think it's very likely. We'll see what happens with China and like North Korea and all that. But for sure, with Russia, we're seeing Trump doing that right now. Okay, so pretty crazy news. Now from Max 24, Trump expects quick deal on mineral supplies with Ukraine, according to Reuters, after Zelensky rejected a U.S. offer to transfer 50% of Ukraine's most important minerals to Washington. Trump is pushing for a simplified pact before moving forward with military aid or peace talks with Russia. So yeah, it looks like Trump's still trying to work on getting some sort of mineral deal with Ukraine, try to get some rare earth minerals in exchange for weapons. And it looks like he's trying to do that before even sending military aid to Ukraine. So hopefully it won't be at the point where the U.S. withholds military aid to Ukraine. If they're not able to sign some sort of deal with Ukraine on these minerals. But we'll see what happens here moving forward. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, the U.S. is considering reducing its military presence in Europe due to priorities in the Asia Pacific region and along the border with Mexico. This was reported today by NBC News. U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth told Zelensky about this, leaving the Ukrainian delegation stunned by this statement. Okay, so here's Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary. And, we know that the U.S. is pulling a lot of their troops away or thinking about doing so inside of Europe. And, they are starting to focus heavily on China now and also Mexico. There was just reports coming out over the last maybe 3 to 4 days that they're going to start going after the cartels, most likely. They're even down. We have Green Berets down in Mexico training the Mexican military down there to go after these cartels also that are transporting, they're doing human trafficking and also transporting fentanyl across the border. Lots of drugs are flowing into the U.S. So the Trump administration is trying to put an end to that. So it looks like they're focused on a lot of other things, not so much Europe anymore, not so much Russia. And if anything, they're going to be butting up with Russia here very soon. Now, for more Monitor, Russian sources are in a panic about certain Ukrainian troop movements to potentially open a new front line up. No details. Let's see what materializes. Okay, so we've been hearing a lot about this over the last probably week or 2 weeks now, that Ukraine could launch another incursion into Russia, maybe. We'll see if that happens. I was thinking maybe up in the Bryansk region, or maybe another incursion into Kursk, maybe in a different section, or could it be Belgorod? Who really knows? I think it'd be more highly likely to be either Bryansk or Kursk, but there's been a lot of talk about that. I just wanted to share that with you guys as they're now talking about this on X again. Now from Benny Johnson, breaking: Zelensky blocks access to President Trump's social media platform, Truth Social, across Ukraine. Okay, so I thought this was crazy. Here's a little screenshot of somebody trying to access Truth Social inside of Ukraine. It says Truth Social is currently unavailable in your area. So yeah, there was a couple small sources on mainstream news talking about this, but nothing extreme as of yet. But looks like potentially the Ukrainian authorities may have blocked Truth Social, which is Trump's social media platform inside of Ukraine. And maybe this is due to all the statements that Trump's been making about Ukraine. And he's recently calling him like a dictator. So, I mean, this may not look exactly good when Trump is calling him a dictator. And at the same time, if this is true that Zelensky blocked access, then that's definitely not going to look good on him. But, obviously with all the things that Trump's coming out and stating, maybe Zelensky wants to try to get reelected. I think I heard something he might try to run for reelection or something like that. I'm not sure if he even can. But yeah, that was some information coming out today. Now from Jürgen Nonnet, USA: once the land of democracy and freedom, today the home of dictators and blackmailers. U.S. Treasury gives Ukraine 1 hour to sign rare earth deal, according to NBC News. Besson handed Zelensky a document that would give the U.S. ownership of half of Ukraine's rare earth minerals. When Zelensky said he needed time to review the proposal, Bessent said he had 1 hour to sign, or his upcoming meetings with Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio would be canceled, according to 5 U.S. officials and another person familiar with the talks. Okay, so this was just prior to the Munich Security Conference that happened last week, and we had Scott Bessent here, the U.S. Treasury Secretary for the United States. So he showed up inside of Kiev and handed a document to Zelensky, pretty much like some sort of deal to transfer U.S. weapons to Ukraine in return for rare earth minerals. And looks like Zelensky had rejected that, but apparently they were only giving Zelensky an hour and basically telling him, you got an hour to sign this. If not, you're not going to meet with Marco Rubio, and also you're not going to meet with J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference. And all of a sudden, after Zelensky decided, hey, we're not going to go ahead and sign it, looks like that those meetings ended up taking place. So the U.S. was trying to kind of hold him, hold him to the fire and push him to sign this deal without actually reviewing it in thorough. Okay. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, the U.S. is considering a promise to Kiev of automatic accession to NATO if Russia violates the terms of the deal as one of the possible points of security guarantees for Ukraine, according to NBC News again. At the same time, the main condition for ensuring security guarantees is the deal on rare earth metals, which remains in a suspended state. Okay, so interesting news coming out here. We've been hearing about this. Also, that if Russia were to attack Ukraine again after the war comes to an end, and if we get a ceasefire deal, that Ukraine could potentially get automatic accession to NATO. So it's looking highly likely that could be a part of the peace deal, and we know that Russia would not be okay with that if Ukraine were to get into NATO. But at the same time, this could really prevent Russia from ever attacking Ukraine ever again, as they could get immediate NATO membership. Okay, so we'll see if that happens to be a thing. Now, for Vicegrad 24, Macron just held the second European emergency meeting on Ukraine tonight. Okay, this was last night on February 19th, 2025. This time it was a hybrid format meeting between countries that didn't take part in the first emergency meeting a few days ago. Leaders of the following countries attended tonight's meeting: France, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Romania, Czechia, Greece, Portugal, Belgium, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Croatia, Slovenia, Cyprus, Ireland, and Luxembourg. European countries are preparing for a large new joint military aid package. It's likely that Macron used the summit to see what every specific country can contribute with. Okay, so yeah, it looks like they held kind of like a virtual meeting with all these nations. And they just held an emergency meeting earlier this week as well on Monday. Several countries actually attended that in person in Paris. We talked about that. So it looks like Europe is preparing for something big here very soon. We've been hearing also that hundreds of billions could potentially be going to Ukraine, also military equipment and aid. We're also waiting to see which countries will get involved in potentially sending peacekeepers to Ukraine also. So much information coming out regarding that. But yeah, major meeting being held with multiple European nations last night. All right, a couple more things before we get you out of here. From Max 24, 158 out of 161 Russian drones shot down, including 80 UAVs shot down by air defense and 78 drones suppressed by electronic warfare. So it looks like they don't know how many missiles were being shot down, but looks like we had a total of 14. So KH-101, KH-55, Caliber, Iskander K, Iskander M, and KN-23. That's from North Korea right there, the ballistic missiles. So we had ballistic missiles and looks like some cruise missiles going into Ukraine last night as well, but we don't know how many, unfortunately, were shot down. But it looks like 158 out of 161 either being shot down or suppressed by electronic warfare in terms of drones. So as we can see here, another major drone attack onto Ukraine. We've been seeing these numbers very high recently, over 150 per day. All right, now finally, our last update of the day from the Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of February 20th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. All right, now it says here Russia's losses as of February 20th, 1,190 troops, 14 AFVs, 136 vehicles and fuel tanks, 14 tanks, 63 artillery systems, 160 UAVs, 3 MLRS, 6 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Okay, so that's a big one. 6 air defense systems being destroyed on the Russian side over the last 24 hours. That's a lot more than we normally see. We usually see maybe like 1 or 2. So it looks like 6 were destroyed. Also, still right around 15 tanks. We had 14 just over the last 24 hours. A lot of vehicles, 236, and still maintaining right around 1,200 troop losses on the Russia side over the last like week and a half or so. Okay, so huge news from this war today, guys. I want to thank you very much for being here today, and I hope you all enjoy your Thursday on today's date, February 20th, 2025. And I want to thank you again for tuning in for this update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.